Something that I encounter a lot is the statement, there's no evidence. You hear it all over the place in populist circles, echo chambers of the internet, many hours of YouTube videos and wherever, like it's all over. And what they'll usually take from that extension is they'll say there's no evidence, that's why Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, whoever, they have faith to act as a cantilever from their lack of evidence. The problem is the only way that you can conclude that is to have purposefully hidden yourself from the evidence. That's really all there is to it. The second thing people often say is that it's God of the gaps, that there are certain things that we know about science, and then there's certain things that we don't know that don't know yet, and God exists in that gap between the things we do and don't know. Problem is that there are actually 9 keystone arguments for the Christian God. And you can parse those out to defending other kinds, like specific aspects of the godhood and things. But there's 9 keystones. And they're not based off the things that we don't know about science, about information, about the universe and the cosmos. It's not based on things that we don't know. It's about irrefutable facts that we do happen to know. So, let's engage with those now. Possibly, they'll break down into 3 primary categories as well. The first category is to get us to a general kind of supreme divine being, a divinity that is the preemptor of all things. The second category is the things that will get us from that general deism into actual theology and Christian theology. And then beyond that is epistemology, how I've come into interact, encounter, engage with that information. Alright? The first, maybe the most famous, depending on what circles you've dealt with, is the Kalaam-Cosmological Argument, which in short is everything that begins has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. How do we know that the universe has a beginning? Well, there's the background radiation, there's like the Big Bang is preempted on the existence of a absolute beginning, finite point of the universe. So it's not something we don't know, it's something that we do. And nothing that has ever happened wasn't the result of something preemptive of it, which is the second argument, is called contingency. Everything that exists has a preemptive or pre-existing explanation. How do we? So cars exist because there was the people that manufactured them, the people and the machines that manufactured them, the resources that went into their composition, and the organizations that brought both the resources and the individuals, the intelligence necessary, combined them into the existence of a car. The universe applies to that exact same principle of that the universe is comprised of space-time and matter, and in those things, those basic resources had to come into existence simultaneously at a point, that's the Kalaam, and in order for them to have become arranged in the matter, or in the means which we experience them, that requires intelligence behind them that must be the explanation. Ontology, that God is the maximally greatest anything possible. If you can imagine a greater thing than God, then that would be God. That in all possible universes, this is the solution for the problem of the multiverse. People would say that we just happen to live in a universe that is finely tuned, or that is, it appears designed this way. They would use like a bag of marbles. You take out one marble and it's blue, and that's a non-living universe, and you set that, and you just keep taking them out. Eventually you're going to have a red marble in which there is living beings in that universe, and they microsize that as well to planets and solar systems and celestial arrangements, that you keep taking out marbles, blue ones that are galaxies with no living things in them. Eventually you'll have a red one just by sheer chance. However, that doesn't actually solve the problem of why does that one exhibit these features that none of the rest do. Because if it is truly just a chance event that one of these will have life and the rest of them won't, what are those others overwhelmingly lacking that doesn't allow them to? Both of those things have to be explained, and with what we can deal with is the Occam's razor, that a person designed one of them to do so and has not designed the others to do so, is a reasonably fundamental explanation, and it is the most simple explanation for that discrepancy. Next thing is intentionality. If you don't know what intentionality is, an intentional state is the ability of something to be about something else. When you read the label on the outside of a medicine bottle, the information, the arrangement of letters, numbers, and characters on the outside of that label are about the contents designed to be within. There's an information underlying what is contained in those letters, numbers, and symbols that pertain to a reality separate from themselves. If there is only material, matter and energy to the universe, there is no intentionality to it, then also there's no possibility for something to be about something else. It cannot contain something that is intangible relating to something that is not itself. Pretty kind of ethereal, but that is what it is. The next thing is mathematics. The applicability and reproducibility of order and values in the universe are intangible, and they are contingent from that intentionality that I just described. That a number, when you see the number 2 as a struck impression of ink on a page is not anything in and of itself. It's a value of other things. You hold up 2 oranges. That is the value, the number of oranges present. Each one is in itself an orange, but it is not 2, right? Additionally, the fact that you can reproduce equations when you add any 2 things together. 1 and 1 makes 2. That is an intangible interaction that is occurring, and a constant that lies without itself, outside of itself. And apart from a divine order and intentional personal design of the universe, that wouldn't be possible. Last is fine-tuning. When we're talking about fine-tuning, is the known constants, such as the strong and weak forces of the universe, gravity, these things are definite and unchanging. And if any one of them was to be changed even a little tiny bit, the composition of various gases throughout the universe, and the composition of the various elements and their dispersion across the universe that allowed the original star nurseries to begin forming and things like all those little tiny discrepancies across the universe. If you change them even one tiny hair's breadth of a tick on any one of those imaginary dials, the universe does not exist. Not only is it not life permitting, but it doesn't come into existence really at all. If you imagine that the Big Bang occurs when it does, the elements that were created at that moment should have been universally dispersed throughout the universe. They should have been equally dispersed in all three dimensions across however far they would be scattered. It should be exactly equilibrious, but for some reason they were not. And the fact that they were not is what allowed all of us to be here today. So we're getting to the supreme being, that ontologically the maximally greatest being conceivable, that is the personal origin of the universe. Now, we don't know anything about that individual's character, what they would look like, whatever. All we know about them is that they have to exist. The way we get from that being to the God of the Bible, to Jesus Christ, to Yahweh, is morality, the existence of objective moral duties. And the reason that we get from there to specifically Jesus Christ is that when you look across all the different deisms that have come into being, the polytheisms and stuff, you do not see very many which teach any kind of restraint. Almost all of them teach a form of immoral indulgence as a means for spiritual purity, whether that's the hedonists, the primary, the most human that you can be is through the indulgence of physical pleasure, or if that's through the indulgence in intellectual and arrogation, or the indulgence in consumption, the indulgence in whatever it is that humans are pursuing. It's literally people shaping the things they see around them into personifications. So when we think about that as far as moral obligations, the idea that moral obligations exist to begin with, that help is better than harm, that pleasure is better than pain, that us is better than individuality or individualism. Those kind of moral odds are independent of the observer, and they are independent of a society. Whether or not a society decides that putting individuals in camps and tormenting them, or imprisoning them, or torturing them, whether or not society decides that's okay, it's not okay. That's a moral odd, and it is transcendent beyond any of the policing entities and organizations and institutions that mankind has instituted throughout its existence. And then the minimal facts argument regarding the Christian resurrection. Minimal facts being A, Jesus was buried. This is an undeniable fact. He was crucified. He was buried with an honorable, inconsistent burial with his means of death. Is the most uncontestable event in human history. It has the most, source attestations to it of anyone prior to the printing press. I mean, we're talking about enemies attesting to the fact that this happened, as well as those who are ambivalent to the events and those who were friendly towards the events. Every single one of them, they all are concurrent. Jesus Christ lived, he was crucified, and he was buried. So, his burial with a remarkable tomb, meaning that they would have known where it was and how to find it. The second is that they found that tomb, which they would have known how to find. They found that tomb empty. Third thing would be that it resulted in the belief in the disciples. They went from being hiding as cowards to dying as martyrs. And that change must be accounted for in a rational manner. And them all making it up does not fit as a reasonable explanation. Then, the fact that enemies changed their minds and went from tormenting and reproofing those Christians who had become believers to them becoming members of this emergent faith, such as Paul, such as Cornelius, such as that. The fact is that people went from enemies of this movement to propagators of this movement. That must be accounted for in a rational manner, and the previous facts of that Jesus did exist and was crucified and was buried, and that the tomb was found empty, and that the disciples went from cowards to martyrs accounts for those changes. And then lastly, how do I know this? How do I know it?